It looks like AEW and Tony Khan could be in big trouble as former talent have filed a class action lawsuit against both the company All Elite Wrestling and its founder. This according to Pennsylvania State Court filings and a report from the Wrestling News. We are going to talk about exactly what is going on, who these former talent are, what their complaints with All Elite Wrestling are, and why this lawsuit has the potential to forever change the way professional wrestlers are treated, not only by All Elite Wrestling, but also by WWE. There's a whole lot to talk about, a whole lot to dive into, and we're going to tell you everything we know right here, youtube.com/Real Take Wrestling. Be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. All right, so let's set the groundwork here. A couple of months ago, we reported about Kevin Kelly, about Kevin Kelly and his departure from AEW. He had made the rounds in the media and essentially said that he felt like he was pushed out of AEW and pushed out wrongfully so, and that he would be seeking legal action at some point, and it looks like some point is here. Kevin Kelly, along with the Tate Twins, there we go, who you may know as the Boys, who performed alongside Dalton Castle in that group, they have filed a class action lawsuit against both AEW and founder Tony Khan. This comes courtesy of the Wrestling News, who put out a lengthy post where it was essentially an article. So here is the tear sheet of that article. We're going to go through and discuss some of the specifics here. It says, breaking. 3 former talent terminated by the company have brought a lawsuit against All Elite Wrestling, among others. The suit, brought by announcer Kevin Kelly and wrestlers Brandon and Brendan Tate, was filed on August 30th in Philadelphia County, Pennsylvania Court of Common Pleas by attorneys Stephen P. New and Benjamin Bear, and is seeking to void the arbitration clause, of their talent contracts, as well as requesting the court certify a class action suit against AEW over claims that the company is misclassifying its wrestling talent as independent contractors rather than employees. All right, so take a break there. We take a beat. That is a very, very interesting statement because right off the bat, we are in 2 buckets in this lawsuit. Number one, they are claiming that they, coming from the crux of like they were wrongfully terminated, they want to void the arbitration clause of their contract. Now, essentially what this is, and I am not a lawyer, I want to be clear about that, but essentially what this is when you sign with a company like AEW and you're an independent contractor, all that kind of stuff, you know, these types of disagreements, instead of going to court, it's kind of in your contract that you would rather do arbitration, which arbitration, for those of you who've not been a part of it, is a very pricey and costly affair to do. And I think like for most people, they would rather like settle these things either outside of court or without arbitration because of the costs impacted there. And also arbitration clause there would, keep them from actually suing AEW. So that's number one from where I understand it. Number two, which is the class action lawsuit, is something that it was a little bit unexpected here because what the Tate Twins and Kevin Kelly and the representation are essentially saying here is that they want to open up for not only debate and discussion, but for determination the status of AEW's wrestlers. For the longest time, both WWE and All Elite Wrestling have classified wrestlers as independent contractors, not as full-time employees. And what the difference is independent contractors are no different than people that you would hire to do a certain project or hire to, let's say, bartend at a wedding or what have you for a night. Like, these are people who essentially work jobs like per project or per event. For the most part, obviously, there's different classifications. Professional wrestlers are also independent contractors, don't fall into that specific role, but they have the same rights and the same level of responsibility in terms of how the company needs to take care of them, which is not that much because they're not employees. The company has to go through less hoops in order to terminate contracts. The company has to provide less evidence really to terminate contracts. The company can essentially control what that talent does. Now, what the plaintiffs here in this suit are essentially trying to do is open that up for discussion and say that AEW is misclassifying wrestling talent as independent contractors when they should be employees. And I think the crux of this, from what we've heard about this lawsuit, is that had they been classified as employees, which, it seems like they are indicating that they should have been, then they would not have been fired. And given the nature of professional wrestling contracts, given the fact that you are, not allowed to do certain things, there are non-competes, there are things like that keep you from doing things that other independent contractors would be open to do. That, in that sense, you are treated as, as employees in everything but name. And in that, you have all the restrictions of an employee would without any of the benefit, without any of the protection. And that has been a battle that people have been talking about and fighting for years. Go back to the days of the golden era of professional wrestling in the WWF, when Jesse the Body Ventura was trying to unionize professional wrestling. And one of the things that he talked about was that status of independent contractors. Now, it's worth noting that there are talent within AEW who have the status of being both wrestling talent but also employees. Chris Jericho was a guy who has said to have that classification. I would assume that the EVPs, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, do as well. I think CM Punk, part of the reason why they had to fire him in that public way they did was because he was reportedly an employee of AEW, and that's the way his contract worked. So there are different classifications. There's different ways of doing this. And I think the big thing here that could change a lot, especially the way talent are classified here, is this independent contractor thing. This is something we've talked about for a while, and it's something that I think will be continued to talked about and debated in professional wrestling for a while, because I think everyone's kind of in agreement that independent contractor classification is a bit predatory by wrestling companies, not just AEW, but also WWE as well. And it is a way for them to cut costs. And, WWE was the industry leader, and they kind of have set the tone for what other companies do and the way other companies classify their talent. And it's led to AEW being in a position where it's like, well, we don't need to necessarily classify talent as employees, so we're not going to until they are legally required. And this legal process could do that. We'll see, but let's move on and read through the rest of this. In April, it was reported that the Tate brothers, known professionally as the Boys, were released from their Ring of Honor contracts due to budget cuts. ROH owner Tony Khan claimed during media events that their release was due to no-showing several events, a claim the brothers deny. That claim is now at the center of a defamation allegations against Khan by Tate brothers. Okay, so before we get into Kevin Kelly, I do want to recap a bit of this saga with the Tate brothers, otherwise known as the Boys. They were part of a round of AEW releases that took place right around WrestleMania last year, and it was a very surprising time, obviously, because AEW had not done these types of releases before. The noteworthy thing as far as this lawsuit goes is that Tony Khan was asked about it both at the media event before the ROH Supercard of Honor show that week and then at the media scrum afterwards. And he essentially said that the Tate brothers were cut because they had a history of no-showing events, both under Tony Khan and under the previous regime, which was Sinclair Broadcasting. That is what Tony Khan claims. The Tate brothers came out and denied this. They went on Twitter that week and essentially said, "Oh, okay, it's like that." And it was, it was, I guess, leading up to this. So that's some background on the Tate brothers there. Let's go and read on. Real name Kevin Foote, Kelly, that's Kevin Kelly, is seeking monetary damages, claiming, among other things, that AEW breached his contract and has interfered with ability to find work elsewhere. Also named in the lawsuit is AEW announcer Ian Riccaboni, whom Kelly also seeks monetary damages from and claims defamed him by way of social media after accusing him of being a member of QAnon. Okay, let's recap this Kevin Kelly portion. So this stems from Facebook posts that Kevin Kelly had published back a couple of months ago, where he was talking about this movie, The Sound of Freedom, which has to do with trafficking, but also it is, kind of been associated with certain circles of the far right, QAnon, etc. And essentially what happened is that Ian Riccaboni took to Discord, and a Discord server, and spoke about his disappointment that someone like Kevin Kelly would be a part of this QAnon extended universe, essentially. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that is the gist of what happened. This caused Kevin Kelly to reportedly go and report this to AEW, demand that Ian Riccaboni be reprimanded, that the issue be solved, what have you. That never happened. And while he was told that AEW had taken some sort of measures on this, instead, Kevin Kelly, what ended up happening to him, and one of the things that he has said over the last couple of months, is that he was essentially pushed out. That is when Tony Schiavone comes in as the third man and the lead commentator for AEW Collision. That is when Kevin Kelly kind of gets pushed out. And as we will go on to read, Kelly even claims that AEW, after the fact, would not allow him to work, or would try to blackball him from working elsewhere. Kelly, who joined AEW in June 2023 after working as an English-speaking commentator for New Japan, was fired from his position as an AEW play-by-play announcer in March after he went public on his social media expressing his frustrations with the company and Riccaboni. Attorney Stephen P. New released a statement saying, quote, "I applaud the bravery of these plaintiffs in bringing this long overdue action, challenging the misclassification of pro wrestlers as independent contractors instead of employees. We know we are in for a long, hard fight, but in the end, I believe justice always prevails. The Wrestling News will continue to follow this story, as will we." But that is the original report from the Wrestling News. We also have an additional comment from Stephen P. New, who is the lawyer in this for the plaintiffs. He says, quote, "How fitting and appropriate that on Labor Day weekend, a lawsuit is filed seeking to correct, among other things, the abhorrent practice misclassification of pro wrestlers as independent contractors, not employees. All AEW wrestlers are now members of this putative class." So that is essentially doing a bit of a call to action here, saying if you're an AEW wrestler, you can join this class action lawsuit, help make it stronger, bolster it, and try to change this classification. Now, of course, the reality of this is the way I see it, and again, coming from a PR perspective, this, I think, is a twofold strategy. Number one, I think they, to an extent, do want to challenge the misclassification of AEW talent and professional wrestling talent as a whole. But at the same time, I do think it adds leverage for them in a potential settlement, because at the end of the day, it's a civil suit. This is not a criminal suit. This is not a criminal proceeding. It's a civil suit between the plaintiffs, Kevin Kelly, Tate Twins, and AEW. And in this, what they are seeking are monetary damages. And one of the ways that you have seen in the past in civil suits pressure be put on defendants is by doing things like this, putting pressure on something that we all kind of know is wrong, like this classification of independent contractors for professional wrestlers, and threatening to change that, threatening to bring that to light, threatening to take it to court, and actually opening that can of worms. It's something that in reality, neither WWE or AEW as companies want to open up, because if it does change, and again, I think it would be a very long, hard battle, as Stephen P. New said there, it would be a very long battle for that to happen. But if it does change, not only does it change the types of benefits you have to provide your talent, not only does it change the structure of pay, the structure that you have to have as a company in order to run a professional wrestling outfit, but the economics are completely different. You are spending way more money. It impacts your budget. It is something that I promise you TKO does not want to do. I promise you Tony Khan does not want to do as an owner of that company. Because, again, when you open that can of worms and that precedent is set, it changes the dynamics a lot. So for these companies, they would much rather, I think, settle, given the pressure of something like this, rather than, move this forward to court and opening up this can of worms. And that's, I think, part of the strategy here, or it could be part of the strategy here. We don't know. It is TBD. I think right now, of course, the plaintiffs and the lawyer are going full force saying this is what they plan to do. We'll see how far this goes. But it is an interesting time. This obviously comes, during a time where WWE and Vince McMahon are also involved in this lawsuit with Janelle Grant. Very, very, very different situation. I want to be clear, but two very high-profile lawsuits here. The AEW one is likely going to, I think, stay within more professional wrestling circles rather than the mainstream, just given the nature of the Vince McMahon stuff. That was going to go mainstream no matter what. But this does open up, again, an interesting conversation about this independent contractor clause. And I think most people, like I said before, are in agreement that professional wrestlers should be viewed as employees, especially when they're signed to exclusive contracts, especially when they have a certain number of dates. And if they're wrestling for you, if they're not really allowed to wrestle elsewhere, or there are heavy restrictions on where they're allowed to wrestle, then they should be treated as employees. I think that is the crux of what most people have been saying for years around this independent contractor stuff. They should have health benefits. They should be taken care of inside and out of the ring. Of course, we'll see how far that goes, but this is, again, historic day potentially for professional wrestling if this ends up changing things. I am not, again, I'm not a legal expert by any means. I can read, and I am very familiar with certain cases that are similar, but it is TBD about whether or not this will actually change things. One thing I can tell you is that neither WWE or I think AEW want to change that classification. It is just too much of a benefit for them. We'll see what happens, though. Obviously, there's a lot that could happen over the next couple of months, potentially years. As we know, litigation, settlements, all these kinds of things, they take time. They take a lot of money sometimes, and I think part of the reason why you're seeing this happen in Philadelphia, or in the local Philadelphia court, is because obviously Kevin Kelly is from Philadelphia. Tony Khan made these comments specifically about the Tate Twins in Philadelphia, so I think they kind of want to keep it there. We'll see what happens there. Guys, the post wrestling WrestleNomics also did a really good breakdown of this. Go check it out over there. They are very, very, very well apt at talking about these things as well. So go check that out. But this is an insane story that we're definitely going to keep our eyes on here at youtube.com/Real Take Wrestling. So be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever new videos released. Let me know in the comment section what your reaction is to this lawsuit, the classification. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I want to hear from y'all. Until next time, be happy, be healthy, and as always, keep it real.